The Lincoln Stabbing, a contract killing in a cathedral city. In the historic city of Lincoln, where a medieval cathedral casts a long shadow over winding streets, a thoroughly modern and brutal crime was conceived in the cold glow of smartphone screens. This wasn't a crime of passion or a robbery gone wrong. It was a calculated corporate execution ordered by the management of a local drug empire to solve a human resources problem. The problem was Sam Davies, a 23-year-old university student turned drug runner. His punishment for suspected betrayal was a meticulously planned death sentence, carried out for a fee of £5,000. This is the story of how paranoia, debt, and the fragile egos of amateur kingpins led to a contract killing, and how the digital footprints left by the killers built an inescapable path to justice. The fall of a charismatic runner. By 2021, Daniel Haidari, a 25-year-old with a University of Lincoln degree, had become an unlikely drug lord. He was the CEO of a significant cannabis wholesale operation, supplying large quantities of the drug across Lincoln and reportedly earning £500,000 a year. He kept his hands clean, operating as the silent supplier at the top of the chain. His key middle manager was Joe Jameson, 24, a man described as a professional criminal who handled the street-level distribution. Jameson was ambitious and well-connected, running a crew of dealers and runners to move the product supplied by Haidari. One of his most reliable runners was Sam Davies. Sam didn't fit the stereotype of a hardened criminal. Charismatic, calm, and intelligent, he had a background that included university studies and plans to return to them. For his friends and family, his involvement in the drug world was a baffling and worrying detour. For a time, he navigated it successfully, efficiently delivering product and maintaining a low profile. But the lifestyle began to take its toll. The constant pressure, the inherent danger, and the isolation started to corrode his mental state. Those closest to him saw a dramatic shift. His girlfriend witnessed increasingly severe mood swings and a deep-seated paranoia that he couldn't shake. He became convinced he was being watched, that his every move was being monitored. To cope with this mounting fear, he began to self-medicate with Xanax, a powerful anti-anxiety drug. Crucially, he sourced the pills not from his own network, but from a rival dealer. This was his first critical mistake. This rival now had leverage over him, pulling him into a dangerous orbit outside the protection of his own crew. It was against this backdrop of debt and distrust that Jameson's operation suffered a major blow. A safe house was raided, not by police, but by thieves. There was no forced entry, indicating an inside job. An estimated £8,000 worth of cannabis was stolen, along with a laptop containing sensitive information about the network. For Jameson, who was already in significant debt to Haidari, this loss was catastrophic. It was a financial disaster and, more importantly, a sign of weakness. Whispers immediately turned to Sam Davies. His increasingly erratic behavior, his new association with a rival, and his growing paranoia made him the prime suspect. The theory that solidified within the gang was that Sam, compromised and perhaps coerced by his new Xanax supplier, had given up the location of the stash. Whether he did it for money, for drugs, or out of fear, didn't matter. In the rigid hierarchy of their world, he had betrayed the firm. He had become a liability, and the board of directors was about to convene. The £5,000 contract. For Daniel Haidari and Joe Jameson, the situation demanded a decisive response. It wasn't just about the lost money. It was about authority. Letting a betrayal like this go unpunished would shatter their reputation and invite further challenges. They needed to send an unequivocal message to Sam and to anyone else who might consider crossing them. They decided on a final, brutal solution: a contract killing. The price for a human life was set at a chillingly low £5,000. Haidari, the man at the top, allegedly authorized and funded the hit. Jameson, the incensed and indebted lieutenant, was tasked with the logistics. To find their hitman, they turned to 21-year-old Billy Gill, another associate within their circle. The communication that followed, later presented in court, was stark in its banality. In a text message, Hidari asked Gil if he knew someone who could dip someone up, cold, detached slang for a stabbing. Gil knew just the man, 20-year-old Aimantas Gakas. He vouched for him as a certi boy, slang for a certified, reliable individual, adding that Gakas had done that stuff before. Gakas was a willing and eager recruit for the fee. With the assassin chosen, the plan moved with terrifying speed. The plot was cemented through a flurry of texts and calls on the afternoon and evening of May 27, 2021. The digital traffic between Hidari, Jameson, Gil, and Gakas was relentless as they coordinated the lure, the location, and the timing. Jameson, his anger palpable, took it upon himself to threaten Sam's girlfriend directly, telling her in no uncertain terms that he was going to kill Sam. The trap was being set, and every click and every call was another nail in Sam Davies' coffin. The trap in St. Giles. On the evening of May 27th, Sam Davies thought he was simply going to score some Xanax. He received a message from what he believed was a trusted contact, directing him to a quiet residential area in the St. Giles estate. He had no idea the messages were from his would-be killer, and that the meeting was a fiction designed to draw him into the open. At around 10:30 p.m., a taxi dropped him near Coleridge Gardens, a peaceful, unassuming street. Waiting in the darkness was Aimantas Gakas. He was dressed head to toe in black, a shadow of death against the suburban backdrop. In his hand, he clutched a large, ferocious, Rambo-style knife, a weapon chosen for maximum damage. As Sam walked into the designated area around 10:45 p.m., Gakas emerged without warning. The attack was swift and horrifically violent. He plunged the knife deep into Sam's chest not once, but twice, before melting back into the night. CCTV would later show Gakas fleeing the scene, his deadly work complete. But incredibly, Sam Davies did not die instantly. Fueled by adrenaline and a desperate will to live, he staggered away from the park. Bleeding heavily, he made his way down Coleridge Gardens and collapsed at the doorstep of a random house, using his last ounces of strength to knock on the door. The resident who answered was confronted with a scene of unimaginable horror. A young man, drenched in his own blood, slumped on their doorstep. The emergency call was made at 10:48 p.m. Paramedics arrived within minutes, and in a heroic effort, performed open-heart surgery on Sam right there on the pavement. He was airlifted to Queen's Medical Center in Nottingham, but his injuries were catastrophic. At 2:45 a.m., Sam Davies was pronounced dead. The inescapable digital trail. The killers had been careful to strike in the dark, away from immediate witnesses. But they had been careless in the digital realm. They had left behind a trail of data so clear and damning it was like a signed confession. The East Midlands Special Operations Unit, a team of elite investigators, began to piece it together. The first major breakthrough was the discovery of the murder weapon, the Rambo knife, discarded near the scene. Forensic analysis quickly found the DNA of Aimantas Gakas all over it. This provided a direct physical link between him and the murder. Next, detectives delved into the suspects' digital lives. They mapped the communications between Hidari, Jameson, Gil, and Gakas. The data showed a huge spike in calls and texts between the four men on May 27th, building to a crescendo in the minutes before the attack, followed by an abrupt and telling silence immediately after. CCTV provided the visual narrative. Cameras tracked Gakas' movements throughout the evening, leaving a pub, going home to change into his all-black killing attire, and then moving purposefully through the streets of St. Giles towards the murder scene. Other cameras even captured vehicles linked to the defendants circling the area before the attack, like sharks waiting to strike. The fake Xanax deal was the final piece. The burner phone used to lure Sam to his death was traced back to Gakas. the digital web was complete. Within days, a series of coordinated raids brought the house of cards down. Jameson was arrested first, then Haydari, Gill, and finally Gakis, who was apprehended following a public appeal. The digital ghosts of their conspiracy had come back to haunt them. Justice in the Crown Court. The trial of the four men, along with 3 other associates who were later acquitted, began at Nottingham Crown Court on the 12th of January, 2022. It was a long and complex case, lasting 13 weeks. The prosecution, led by William Harbidge QC, laid out the overwhelming evidence, describing the murder as a cold-blooded execution. They presented the jury with the damning text messages, the precise phone data, the chilling CCTV footage, and the irrefutable DNA link. The defense attorneys mounted a weak challenge. They argued that the slang term "dip up" could have meant a simple robbery, not a murder. They attempted to paint Sam Davies as a volatile character, a thief who brought his fate upon himself. But the evidence of a coordinated, premeditated plot for hire was simply too strong to be explained away. On the 6th of April, 2022, the jury returned its unanimous verdict, guilty of murder for all 4 main defendants. 6 days later, Justice Goss handed down their sentences. He condemned their actions, noting that they had treated a human life as a disposable commodity to protect their petty criminal enterprise. Joe Jameson and Daniel Haydari, the architects of the plot, were each sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 25 years. Imantas Gakas, the man who carried out the stabbing, received a life sentence with a minimum of 24 years. Billy Gill, the fixer who connected the bosses to the killer, was sentenced to life with a minimum of 23 years. The judge acknowledged that Sam Davies had been a gifted young man with a future that had been stolen from him. For his devastated family, no prison sentence could ever fill the void left by his murder. The case was closed, but it stands as a stark testament to the brutal realities of the drug trade, and a chilling example of how, in the 21st century, a contract to kill can be sealed with a simple text message.